We thought that it would be great if we could do the statewide level of our funding formula and then start going down to what happens in Douglas County School District. Leanne has already shared with you that right now our per pupil funding is about $62.07, hoping to be $62.23. So this is pretty much the same presentation I shared with the board last week, but it should give you some clarity on where we are in Douglas County in relationship to what Leanne just shared. So first, we really have really good news, and I was really pleased to let the board know last Tuesday night that we have scrutinized our budget, and we are anticipating very positive news from the legislature. So we were able to say at this point that we're putting back $10.6 million to our schools in the form of $200 per student. We are committing to $125 per student of ongoing, so all of our schools will see that in their SBB dollar amount. And then in addition, we're starting with $75 per student of one-time money. So that's going to be on a different line in your SBB worksheet. So you all, as SAC members working with your schools, you will see the $125 at the top as an SBB increase, and then the $75 on its own one-time money line. We're hoping for that to get better. Leanne said that it looks pretty good for the legislature, but we don't know until they're finished. If we get more money, that would be even greater. Also for our employees, we're looking at $9.7 million going back to our employees starting in the 13-14 school year. A 2% average salary. We're looking at 1% of ongoing again. Again, based upon the work of the legislature, we're hoping that that will be an increase. And then we're committing right now to 1% of one-time money, comparable to what we did last year where we had the 2% one-time stipend that we provided to all of our employees in September. The para increase, the district is absorbing that $2.2 million increase, and that 0.9% or about $2.2 million will be continuing to increase through the 2018-2019 school year. So we're always anticipating that cost increase. Leanne had shared that we have seen decreases in per pupil funding, at the same time seeing increases in costs due to new students, but also a prescribed legislative increase in costs in our para contribution each year. The medical benefit increase, again, the district is absorbing that. We did see somewhere between a 5% and 7% increase across the board for our medical needs, but the district is absorbing that as well. So all told, $9.7 million will be the increase into our employees next year over the current year. And then finally, again, due to the positive news, we wanted to make sure that we were giving some of it back to our parents. You all know very well that you've been hit pretty hard with increases in fees, so we're eliminating the technology fee at this point, saving our parents about $1.2 million. So Governor Hickenlooper's budget, Leanne shared a little bit of that. So how does it impact Douglas County schools? So our increase in PPR, we're anticipating about $220 more per student. Now you saw on Leanne's slide that on average it's about a $228 per student increase. We're really close to that, but remember the average was $6,400 per student and we're at $6,200 per student. But we're happy to have the increase, but we're still not anywhere near average, nor anywhere near what we would have been had we been following the School Finance Act all this time. But that increase in PPR has some caveats, and correct me please, Leanne, if I don't have this correct, but that there's a teacher quality pipeline in which we need to designate $3.64 per student to fund that. And in addition, the at-risk dollars to early childhood, and I apologize, that's cut off there. It's on average about $6.95 per student. It is something that's very specific that says for our at-risk students here in Douglas County, it's $70 per student. I just translated that to an overall $6.95 per all of our students, not just our at-risk. That has to be put aside. So roughly our net increase in PPR is about $209 per student. So total new dollars for Douglas County for 62,246 students. That number is a projection. We just received that. That's what's on the SBB worksheets going out to our schools. That will result in about $13 million of new money into Douglas County. Our Douglas County neighborhood schools should get about $11.2 million of that, and our charter schools will get about $1.8 million of that new money. In addition, increase in funded pupil count is about 1,357 students. I just wanted to make sure that as we go through time, you'll see that we are expecting increases as well as the increase in our per pupil dollar amount. So this is our history of our PPR, not the statewide average that Leanne shared, but this is our PPR here in Douglas County. So we started in 2006, and you can see as Leanne indicated, in 2009, we were really matching the School Finance Act. It was being fully funded, no rescissions or state stabilization factors or negative factors, until we get to 2010. In 2010, there was a rescission. I don't know what the percentage ended up being, but it hit Douglas County to the tune of about $10 million. But even with that rescission, our PPR still went up a little bit in the 2010 school year. So we've seen increases through 2010. In 2011 was when we saw the first real drop down to $6,541 per student. And we continued to decline until 2012 and 2013, where for all intents and purposes, it was flat funding on a per student basis. And now you can see in 2014, we're seeing that increase of about $220 minus those other things to give us a total of $64.41 per student here in Douglas County. The important thing to note here is that $64.41 is just over the funding we received in 2008 and still less than what we received in 2009 and in 2010, and even less than what we had in 2011. So it's good news that we're getting more money back, but it still is nowhere near where we were even in 2011. So here's where we are philosophically. We really want to spend the money that we have, not the money that we hope to have. So that's been our mantra moving forward over the last 3 years. So what we really wanted to make sure that we're doing is managing expectations. Right now, we're committing to $20 million going out into our organization, and we're committing that without even making any assumptions whatsoever that we will have to pull that back. We are in such a positive financial situation right now that we are ready to allocate out $20 million more to our organization. So we still need more information though. The legislature is not done. Sequestration, the federal government is still looming over our heads. There's still a lot of uncertainty. But still, because of our financial situation, we're able to make that commitment at this point. We want to spend available money where it matters most. So as we create our budget, we're creating our budget based upon the priorities in Douglas County, and we want to make sure that we're funding those priorities. And then finally, we want to continue to create fiscal health. What's been really hard is every year we go out and we have to cut more and more and more. What we'd like to do is be mindful of the fact that we'd like to get out of this cut situation, and we really like to always continue to grow so that we're always adding money back into our organization. So we are being conservative about spending money to make sure that we have it before we spend it. As I said, there's still a lot of uncertainty. We don't know where the legislature will stand. Leanne was commenting about the fact that the pie for categoricals has to increase, but we really don't know whether it's going to increase in one program over another. All those are question marks. Sequestration of the federal government. We have about a $10 million federal budget here in Douglas County. They're telling us to hold back somewhere between 5% and 7%. So for us, that would mean a reduction of $700,000. We have to keep that in mind as we move through time. We have to make sure that we know what's going to happen before we allocate out more resources. At this point, we've already considered the $700,000, as well as the other issues regarding maintenance of effort. We're required to maintain a certain level of our local funding to special education needs. We're monitoring that. And again, we've just finished our second quarter to see our second quarter results. We'll know a lot more after the third quarter. So, as we've gone through time, what has led to our solid fiscal stability here in Douglas County at this point? So first of all, in operations, they have made huge inroads in becoming very, very efficient. Lee Smith is our sustainability manager in operations, and he has worked exceptionally hard in managing our utility expenditures throughout the school district. In addition, right now, finance and operations are working together to work with what they call a performance and energy performance contract. What you do is you hire a vendor, they go out and they make all controls and maybe weather stripping and insulation in our schools that will help drive down the cost of utilities, and they will guarantee that we will see a certain amount of savings. Those savings will go to pay for the construction and capital costs associated with that program. In addition, we had the board last spring about this time approve a new COP policy, giving us an ability to partner with charter schools. We have an untapped financial benefit here in Douglas County. It's our credit rating. Charter schools come into our school system. They need to provide classroom spaces for their enrollment, and they don't have the level of credit that we do in the school district. So if a charter school comes in to our school district and says, hey, we'd really like to provide classrooms for you, we say, great, we need them in Castle Rock and we need them in Parker. If you're willing to locate your school in those areas in which we need classroom space, we will agree to take out a certificate of participation on your behalf. They benefit because the amount of lease payments is less for them because the interest rate is less, and we benefit because we don't have to use our own PPR to pay the lease payments for our own COP. We get the classroom space we need. They're paying for the lease payment. All we did was facilitate the process by selling the certificates on our credit rating. So those three things in particular for operations have made a huge impact on our ability to be more efficient here in Douglas County. Keep in mind that for Aspen View alone, we took out a COP on behalf of Aspen View. Our lease payment requirement would be $1 million a year to pay for that same classroom space. That $1 million a year is coming out of Aspen View's PPR, not Douglas County Neighborhood Schools PPR. Human resources. We've had human resources work at maximizing our compensation. You all have heard that we're talking about going to more of a market-based pay, where we're looking at the value of teachers across the organization. A big example would be in our speech language or special education area, where special education providers, generally speaking, are harder to find. And so therefore, we'd like to compensate them more in order to attract them to Douglas County. We still have the need. But other teachers, because there's so many, so the market provides a lot of them, we are able to make offers to them based upon what their market will bear or allow, giving us more compensation dollars available to hire those hard to hires. This would be applicable to our math and science teachers as well, not just our special education teachers. So driving all of those efforts has made a difference for us. We've eliminated all the other compensation benefits or are phasing them out over time. We'd like to make sure our compensation dollars are going to teachers and staff members that are here in Douglas County, not those that are leaving us and retiring. And then finally, Human Resources worked very hard at finding some operational efficiencies through Taleo and ASAP. ASAP is a new substitute teacher software, and Taleo is a new recruitment software and hiring software. That's made a huge difference on how all of us can be more efficient in going through applications for the various jobs we have to fill. So other things, health benefits. Since 2012, we've actually offered greater benefits to our employees and have ramped down the net deductible. We have dropped down the deductible for those plans, and with the HSA contribution, it is a very affordable $1,500 per employee, single deductible. And the big change occurred when we went out for bid for a new benefits consultant. Before that, we were paying about $800,000 a year for a benefit consultant, and the new contract is about $180,000 a year, so that's a sizable savings. Budgeting improvements, we've talked about this for about a year now, where we're really trying to bring our budget closer to actuals and do appropriate trend analyses as we go through our second quarter, our third quarter. We've worked hard at that. Accounting, we've eliminated the letter of credit. We do have cash that funds our Tabor reserve. We are always looking for alternative investments. We thought, okay, the Tabor reserve, the money's just sitting there. It's about $13 million. Let's go ahead and invest that for a year or a year and a half, getting 0.8% interest versus 0.2. It's really remarkable to me that we can only get 0.8% interest on $10 million. Those are statutory constraints. However, 0.8 is still 4 times 0.2. We're still trying to drive those changes. And also the instructional fees. Right now, all the instructional fees, they were in the past shared with the school district centrally, 60-40 about. So now 100% of all the instructional fees received by the school stays with the school. So as we go through and where we are right now, we're talking about budget development going into 2014. These are the things that we don't know about right now. So again, I mentioned federal sequestration, special education maintenance of effort. There's a swing that we've budgeted for of about $3 million. Depends upon what our actual costs are. We might have to bring $3 million back into the general fund out of the federal fund to meet our maintenance of effort requirement. Remember that our student counts, that 1,300 or so new students we're expecting, are projections based upon our planning department. Those could be more, they could be less. There could be more students going to our charter schools. There could be more students going to our neighborhood schools. We won't know all of that until the October count. So as an example, in the current year, our October count actually saw about $1 million being pulled from our neighborhood schools because the growth did not occur that we were expecting. And then finally, legislative action. You know, Leanne said the legislature is working right now. Normally we know early April maybe, late April, who knows. But we are feeling very positive because we also know that the situation in the state of Colorado is much better. Every single revenue forecast since last June, September, December, all of those revenue forecasts have been very positive. The next revenue forecast we get is the 20th of March. Generally speaking, the legislature does act fairly quickly after they have that revenue forecast in March. So I also shared the second quarter highlights at this point, so I wanted to give you an update about where we are in the current year. So our assigned general fund balances. So we had assigned fund balances in our comprehensive annual financial report effective June 30, 2012, the early separation agreement. This was an agreement that was entered into 4 years ago. This current year we paid it, and it was our 4th year of payments. Next year will be our final payment. We set aside $3.16 million. We spent $1.59, so we have a remaining liability of $1.56. When we end 2013, you will see that $1.56 million as an assigned fund balance against our total fund balance. Extended service severance phase out. I talked about that a little bit, about our compensation efficiencies, reforms, et cetera. So one of those was the extended severance payout. We paid out in October and in January a total of $2.99 million for individuals who were retiring. This amounted to about $32,000 per teacher, specific to teachers. So as part of our reform and compensation efficiencies, we have agreed to phase that out over the next probably 3 to 5 years. Teachers were given numerous choices on how they could do that. So the total liability, it had to be announced to us by the 1st of December. The total calculated liability was $6.7 million. We actually held aside $6 million. We paid out roughly $3. We have a remaining liability of $3.7 million. Again, at the end of 2013, you'll see that $3.7 million as an assigned fund balance. School discretionary one-time allocations. You knew back in August, we said, hey, we've got additional resources available. We need to send them back out to our schools. So at that point, we gave them an additional $75. We were planning on $50 per student. We increased that up to $125 per student. That total was $6.4 million. We allocated out $6.65 million, a little bit more than what we anticipated because of the student growth throughout the system. And then finally, the 2% retention stipend, that was paid in September. And what we thought that would be $5.6 million. It ended up to be $5.54 million. Again, all those monies have been spent. We also have a TBD here in that final column because we expect there will be additional dollars. We've already committed to $75 more per student going into next year, and we've already committed at least a 1% pay increase one-time money going into next year. But we left these as TBDs because we expect them that they could be more. And we're hopeful that the legislature will help us out there and that our $220 or $210 more per student will be maybe $250 or maybe $300 per student. Wouldn't that be great? So finally, our year-end projection. I talked about budgeting. In the past, most of our expenditures were just set to budget. There wasn't any positive trending going on to really assess what our final expenditure will be in various lines, whether it's salaries or benefits or our supply lines. So we've done that effective the second quarter. So based upon that, our revised expenditure budget was $481. Our projected year-end expenditures, these are projections now, are $474. Our restricted and assigned fund balances, I've added those that I put up there. This also includes what we might anticipate our schools will be saving. The bottom line is that we're expecting our unassigned ending fund balance to be $15 million. In here is also our $13 million Tabor reserve. Go ahead, Leanne. So, general fund assumptions again on all these projections. We assumed 100% of school and department carryover would be spent. That's not a valid assumption. We know that our schools and departments are not going to spend all of their carryover. However, if they don't spend it, we know that it's gone from the discretion of the district. It will just be assigned fund balances to our schools and departments. So in this assumption, we're assuming that those are all going to be gone or assigned to them in which the district has no discretion over those dollars. 100% of the contingency budget line. If we don't spend all of our contingency, the transfer will go into capital. Remember, as part of our budget reductions for going into the current year, we took the $3.2 million ongoing transfer from the general fund into our capital projects fund. We cut that. That has been ongoing for many, many years, and in fact, in years past, it's been closer to $10 to $15 million. So over the last 2 years, it was budgeted at $3.2 million. Now we've eliminated that. We all know that we do not have any additional bond dollars. We're ramping down all of that. And we still have over 100 facilities that have to be maintained. So this is a way in which we can make sure we have those capital dollars available to meet those unexpected needs. And then finally, 100% of pay for performance dollars. In the school system, we really want to drive the most dollars to our employees because we really want to attract and retain our best quality employees. Pay for performance is a large part of that. We'd like to continue building up that pot of money. So anything that's not spent on pay for performance will go right back into the pay for performance line. In the past, that hasn't been done either. So again, just to remind everyone that we do have very, very good news at this point. We're going to send $200 per student back to our schools, 2% back to our employees, and then $25 per student back to our families to try to start the process of bringing down our instructional fees to all of our community members who have students in our schools. So the final slide I wanted to show is basically this efficiency slide again. We have updated that. We have updated this, to reflect the 2013 PPR as well as our override dollars. So our override dollars of $33.7 million has been ongoing since 2006. That was the last time we saw an increase. As you know, our students continue to increase, so the PPR associated for our mill levy override continues to go down. So we've updated this. Also reflected here are all of the budgetary increases that were approved by voters in November. So you can see that Douglas is still up there at the lowest funded. This is mill levy override plus our PPR. We're still at the highest, still at the lowest in terms of PPR, but we are still maintaining some significant success in the academic achievement of our students. So the final thing that I was asked by the DAC leadership team was to talk about how our departments are spending some of their carryover dollars. All of our departments, they've given me some high-level data about how the money's being spent. Many of you have heard that the academic teams are spending most of their carryover on developing assessments for the balanced assessment framework. Many of our teachers are working with our curriculum department, developing guaranteed and viable curriculums for all of our grade levels as well as all of our curricular areas. And then we have a group of teachers that are working with our professional development department to create professional development opportunities for all of our employees here in Douglas County. In operations, we had the issue that occurred in June with the hail. And so there was about $100,000 worth of excess property costs. Fortunately, our operations team had the dollars available to fund that need. $400,000 in changes in some of our schools regarding their athletic spaces, either the fields or the gymnasiums. We've had a moratorium on spend for large equipment in our operations department for the last 4 years. They had dire needs of custodial equipment, floor sweepers, snow removal equipment. So they have actually spent about $900,000 to date of their carryover on those things that are going directly to support our schools. Information technology, they have spent about $600,000 to date to expand our wireless access points at all of our schools, focused mostly on that bring your own device to school initiative to make sure that a lot of our students have the ability to access the internet through wireless as they're in our classrooms. Those are the big hitters. I will share with the DAC to be shared at your discretion and posted the remaining dollars. The remaining items.